Overwatch Season 10 is finally here, and there have been many changes to many of the characters and changes to the meta as a whole, so we're going to go over the best 10 mains that you could be picking as of Season 10. But the only thing I want is 100,000 subscribers before 2025, so if you could smash that subscribe button, I would really appreciate it, and let's jump right in. Now first, we're going to go over 10 characters in this season that you should main, and then 10 worst characters will be the next video that you can check out after this one. Now, the first character I would definitely suggest you main is the new character on the block, Venture. Now, Venture did see some important changes as of Season 10, so they are going to be a little bit different than they were in Season 9.5. And basically, the big change is that Venture is now going to do more damage over time and less direct damage. This means a little bit less burst, a little bit less combos. There's going to be more time for enemies to get bailed out of lethal damage. And while I do think that that makes Venture a little bit weaker than they were previously, they are still incredibly powerful, and they attack the meta in a way that other characters simply do not. Venture can fight from angles that are really hard to force Venture off of. Venture can punish characters really easily with both high damage and crowd control that can push people out of position or can just straight up kill them. And I think the most important thing to get good at Venture is you really just have to practice your cycles of engage, making sure that you always have an ability that can get you out. Notably, your dash or drill dash, unless it's killing someone, is going to be a very useful ability to just get you out of a fight, mainly because digging through the ground is going to have quite a long wind up, especially when all the enemies are looking at you, so you're going to be potentially just killed out of nowhere. So it is important to kind of plan out your engagements as well. Try to find instances where you can singularly target somebody and play your neutral when you don't have these opportunities. Venture has amazing poke damage, so you don't need to force an engagement, and also just putting someone out of position could be very powerful in itself, so definitely keep those things in mind. Now, the last reason I'm suggesting Venture is I think that people don't know how to play against Venture right now, and Venture is going to get a lot of extra free points if you can learn how to play them faster than enemies can learn how to deal with Venture. Especially if you become a good Venture very quickly, you can basically snag up a lot of free wins because people don't know what your counters are, they don't know how to interact with you, and they are not going up against good Ventures that often, and you can use all those things to your advantage to really dominate and have a really successful beginning start of this season. The next character that we definitely got to talk about on this list is Lucio. And something that definitely hurts Lucio quite a bit is that the damage per projectile is getting decreased from 20 to 18, which is actually a really big deal and definitely hurts Lucio. I don't want to sugarcoat it or make it seem like it's not a big deal when it is, but he is getting a little bit of a compensation, getting that sound wave damage increased from 35 to 45. So you're still going to be able to have a little bit of more burst from close range. You're still going to be able to do quite a bit of damage. And I do think that even with this being a net nerf overall by quite a margin, Lucio's just in a really great spot in the meta right now. Ever since the Season 9 changes, mobility has been king. Everyone wants mobility. Everyone wants to either be able to sustain, which there are only a couple of characters that can do so, that can poke very well, Arisa, Sigma, characters like that. But for almost everyone else, they want some form of mobility. And Lucio just enables mobility among most of the characters in the game. Lucio is also very hard to kill himself while simultaneously adding pressure to the team fight. And I do think that people have kind of woken up to the potential value of Lucio, your ability to duel, your ability to peel. You have a lot of options available to you. And I think that all that comes together to just show off that Lucio is just a really strong character, and definitely a character that you can play a team-centric, organized setting with, but you can also be a ranked god with Lucio. And one of the things that I would tell you as a tip for Lucio is find people that you can get value out of just speed boosting them. And you might think that this is like, oh, it's obviously my Rhine or something like that, but you would be surprised just speed boosting DPS around to get better angles, speed boosting Cassidy's around so that you can protect them and they can take angles on enemies that aren't quite expecting it. Because like if you're slicing a corner, right, you're slicing the pie of a corner, and all of a sudden they're trying to round the corner to get out on a side of a Cassidy or whatever character, but because they're being sped boost, they get to wrap the corner a little bit faster, get off a couple more shots that they wouldn't have been able to, and you could pick up picks that way. And there's a lot of ways where Lucio's speed can directly create opportunities for your teams in ways you wouldn't expect, with your speed for playmaking, with your peel, your boop, your damage, and you can go in with dives as well. There's just so many ways to get a lot of value to Lucio, and still, Lucio B is one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful ultimate in the game, I would say. So definitely this character deserves to be one of the best mains. And I think that a lot of people are kind of afraid to pick up Lucio. But I think he's a character that once you pick up and get the Lucio bug, the Lucio flu, he's going to be your favorite character and you're going to love grinding him. So yeah, I would say start now and yeah, good luck. The next character I definitely got to talk about in this video is undoubtedly Sigma. And Sigma is getting a little bit of a nice buff, more of a quality of life change, but the movement speed increased from 16.5 to 20 meters per second for his barrier. So he's going to be able to protect allies a little bit further away from him a little bit faster. And this is just really a buff, but it's more so going to feel really nice. You're not going to have to wait so long for the barrier to get to wherever you're trying to place it. And I think that Sigma is a character that has consistently been one of the best characters in the entire game for quite a long time, and that's really not changing. He's very good at applying pressure. He's basically necessary on all the sniper maps, all the long distance maps, whether it's Havana, Circuit Royale. Sigma is completely dominant on those maps, and honestly, unless the map has areas where it's really easy to flank, a lot of the Koth maps can be weak for Sigma. Most maps in the game are great for Sigma overall, and this character has a way to apply pressure that other characters just cannot. He's very independent, meaning that he doesn't need a lot of resources. He doesn't need a lot of heals. He doesn't need a lot of help. He can apply pressure consistently. He wins almost any 1v1 that he's in. And oftentimes when you're in a fight where you trade a lot of resources and you get down to like a couple of players, really low resources, Sigma thrives in that environment. Like a Sigma and a support can basically 2v4 everyone if they don't have a tank. They can completely shut down enemy DPS that are playing incredibly well. Sigma's an amazing character, definitely a character that you kind of just need to embrace going forward as a tank player in Season 10, and really any tank player should learn Sigma because he's just such a strong character and a necessary character on many of the maps. If you don't want to have like a crazy negative win rate or you don't want to go against the grain too hard, these maps are going to be much easier for you if you just learn how to play Sigma, become pretty competent at him, become good in the mirror, consistently hit your rocks, rock people when they're ulting, just be the better Sigma on those maps, and you're going to just have such a high win rate on those maps. I think it's something that I would say at this point, especially if you're starting to climb the ladder more and more, you shouldn't try to run away from Sigma. You should try to just become a better Sigma, be the best Sigma in the lobby, and then you can play your other characters on the other maps, but especially on those sniper maps, you really need him. He's super, super essential, and it becomes really difficult for you to win those maps if you don't have a Sigma in your back pocket. Now, the next character that I definitely got to talk about in the DPS category is Ashe. And Ashe has just been an amazing character for most of Overwatch 2, and that's really not changing. A hit scan character that can provide tons of damage, can consistently trigger that DPS passive, can overwhelm the enemy's resources with dynamite, and has an ultimate that is actually one of the best in the DPS roster. Bob is really, really good. Ever since we swapped to 5v5, Bob has been able to completely team wipe enemy teams without enough mitigation to shut it down. And especially if you're tracking cooldowns that can shut it down like Sleep Dart, I do think that Ashe is just super, super, super great. And overall, I would really say that this character is a character that doesn't have that many core weaknesses. She has game against dive. You can fall to the low ground, you know, coach go back to the high ground. You could do a lot of damage during the transitionary phase for a lot of these divers. So there's a lot you can do to counterplay divers. You're really good against all the other hit scans. You can challenge them in their ranges. You can fight them. You can either, you know, deny them even the ability to take a fair fight with you because of your dynamite, or you can just straight up headshot them and just beat them in the fair, straight up skill matchup. There's just so much to this character that it gives you a lot of agency over your wins and losses. I do think that a lot of players, when they first pick up Ashe and they start playing Ashe, so like this character feels a little bit off, a little bit weird compared to the other hit scans, and it's really a character that you need to put time specifically into her. You're not going to have a crazy amount of overlap. For whatever reason, it doesn't feel quite perfectly the same compared to, you know, Soldier, Cassidy, Widowmaker even. You really need to put time and effort into only Ashe. And if that's what it takes, I think it's really, really important to do. Put in the reps, put in the time, maybe even have an ult account where you're playing only Ashe to get really good at her, because she's so good against a so big variety of threats. Pretty much good against like all the supports because you can challenge them from range. You don't have to fight them with their effective. Really, really good in most DPS matchups and can just output a ton of pressure against tanks from a safe distance. There's really not any notable weaknesses to this character, and there's so many strengths, especially in ranked. I would definitely say this is a character you should pick up, you should learn, and you should try to master because you're going to have a great Season 10 if you do. Next character we're going to talk about is a little bit of a wild card. I do want to talk about Zenyatta. And Zenyatta is a character that I think has kind of gone all over the place. There was a time, I mean, he was just rocking 275 HP for a while, which was just nuts. They brought him back in line with a reasonable amount, but still, the character is still tanky and could do a lot of damage. And I think a lot of people are kind of afraid to play the Zen because they're afraid to be targeted. They're afraid of the Sombras, the Tracers, right? Notably, both Sombra and Tracer did get nerfed. I think they're still going to be good and played, but they're not going to be quite as strong, which helps Zen a little bit. And I also think that people underestimate the value that you can get as Zen on the way out, making it really hard to jump you, make it really hard to kill you, make it so that if an enemy wants to commit to you, it's going to cost them a lot. You're going to kill one person, discord another, your team's going to trade that out, just trying to keep you alive, and you're going to win the fight because you did so much on your way out the door. And then in all these poke matchups, he just completely breaks those matchups wide open, gets picks in the neutral, can contest characters like even Widowmaker, and just outputs a ton of damage to the enemy tank, meaning that the exchange of resources is going to be heavily in your team's favor. Zen also can be played with a dive, and you can set up your dive characters to be able to really easily get value on targets they're jumping on. Zen plays in so many different compositions so well, and I think specifically the maps where he struggles are like the flashpoint maps where you definitely want a bit more mobility than he offers, but on a lot of other maps he's just really, really strong. It is important to note though that Zen is a character that requires great mechanical skill from you and great positional skill from you, so it's a character that can tax you in two different departments. And it's not always clear why you died. Was it because your teammates didn't peel from you? Was it because you were out of position? Was it because you didn't hit the shots you were supposed to hit while the person was coming after you? There could be a lot of reasons why, and sometimes you could be out of position but frag out. Sometimes you could be completely alone but still win the clutch up and win the 1v1. It's important to try to take personal accountability, look through the replays of the games you lost, find moments where you died where if you would have positioned differently, you could have got help or even potentially clutched up the 1v1, and try to learn from each and every moment, and you're going to become a better and better Zen and start your route to climbing. The next character that we definitely got to talk about in this video is Diva. And I think Diva is a character that is always slept on. People kind of write Diva off because Diva doesn't necessarily always see play in the pro matches, but Diva, especially in ranked play, is almost unstoppable. A character that is able to do things that no other character can do, and she can do them so damn well. Diva can shut down DPS, especially DPS that are trying to take a proactive angle, which, surprise, surprise, is what most DPS are trying to do. They're trying to take a proactive angle, they're trying to force cooldowns, and they're trying to take space with their damage, right? By playing and forcing this angle. Diva can not only deny that, but if an opponent tries to be too greedy for that, Diva can literally just kill them and punish them straight out, which is super freaking powerful. In addition to that, Diva gets to play her advantaged matchup always. So characters like Zarya, you would think, hey, that's a Diva counter, but Divas can completely destroy Zaryas by never fighting their effective range, right? You're playing the distance, you're playing the high ground, you're looking for moments where you can either punish a backline, punish an off angle, you're poking from a distance. Now, it is important that depending on the rank you're in, sometimes this is not going to be the most viable, right? Sometimes your team is going to get mowed down by the Zarya in the front line, and you're like, I gotta stop them as Diva. You run in, you die yourself, right? But after VOD reviewing a ton of Diva players, I see this most often where tanks think they need to do a certain set of jobs, like protect their team, and they go in and they're actually the one that is feeding. They're actually the one that is dying. And it's almost like there's a certain amount of conditioning that needs to happen sometimes in the early fights in a low-ranked lobby, where you don't do the things that you're not supposed to do so that you pseudo save your team at the cost of you feeding, right? Because you don't know what they're going to do, first off. And second off, if your opponents always expect you to do something and it's the wrong thing, you're going to just lose that game, right? If they always expect you to constantly heal bot them or else they fall over, I would say literally let them fall over. Make them learn the lesson a couple of fights. And you might be like, Mills, how am I going to climb if my tank just keeps inting, keeps dying, keeps self-destructing? Well, that's the thing. If you enable that person to play incredibly poorly, you're going to lose that game anyways. And this is one of the big things that I think everyone in low ranks get wrong. And I'm trying to make this video more about the best mains and less about trying to improve and get better. It's important to play your game. That is how you climb. Look at any unranked GM, which I don't think is the most educational resource, but it is important to note in this instance. they do not play their team's game. They do not worry about trying to protect their team on the front line nearly as much as a tank. They do not worry about trying to heal up their team to maximum HP all the time. They do not worry about trying to peel as a DPS. They worry about playing their game, and it doesn't necessarily matter about your teammates' mistakes. And that is the big thing that I see with Diva. They are too worried and too helpful almost. You're trying too hard to cover up your teammates' errors that you yourself are making the error, and you're going to keep doing that the entire game. And you'll say, I can't clam on Diva because I have to protect my team from the Zarya that's frontlining. They'll kill my entire team. But I promise you, you don't have to do that. You're setting yourself up for failure based on your preconceived notion of how you should play or what you should do for your team. I want you to play your own game. Now, speaking of playing your own game, the next character that we got to talk about is Widowmaker. And this is a character that I have misevaluated for quite some time. Widowmaker's amazing. And I understand that this character is still not the easiest to aim in. She definitely has a pretty high skill floor. So for a lot of the lower ranks, you're not going to get that much value out of Widow. But here's the secret. You can miss 7 shots on Widow and hit your 8th one. And that 8th one carries the entire fight. And then you get to do it again in the next point. And you capture that point too because you hit your 8th shot. You don't need to hit every single headshot in order to carry on Widow. You just don't. But as you practice and get better and better at this character, and you're hitting, out of every 5 shots, you're hitting 2 headshots, or you're just hitting some headshots that matter eventually, then you can completely carry a game like no other character. And Widow can just do it so damn well. Honestly, the effective range for Widow is actually farther than you would think. And also, a lot of the times, people are just lower than max HP, and they're just going to die to your one-shot anyways. And as of Season 9, hitting your headshots are quite a bit easier than they used to be. And really, players that can kind of work through that initial hump where you start playing Widow, you start grinding Widow, and you just can't hit anything, right? Everyone's been there where you literally can't hit anything. But slowly but surely, you get better and better at taking your time, finding those shots, finding those pockets where you can get big bursts of value and turn team fights. The number one tip I would suggest for you on Widow is you have to master taking that first shot with perfect accuracy. And this is something that is hard to learn because it's opposite of what you do on almost every character. It's finding an angle that enemies don't expect you, planting your feet and not moving left, right, or crouching because you're not dodging any fire. You're literally in an angle that enemies will not expect you for the moment that you're going to take that shot. And you take a shot in a way that only focuses on your actual aim, your actual mouse, your actual joystick, whatever the case may be. You're not hurting that aim by making it so you're moving around, and you're focusing most on accuracy and looking for moments where enemies are in fixed positions, whether they're jumping, whether they're moving, very predictably, or whether they're just standing still because you're fighting from an angle they don't expect. You can get that value and you can dip out. I think these are the important things you need to learn. Just as much as the mechanical aspect, it's also the strategic side of Widowmaker and understanding that there are going to be situations where you're going to be able to hit shots easier than others. Now, the next character that we do got to talk about is Brig. And I know a lot of people have been kind of sleeping on Brig. Not great mobility overall, and a character that can struggle with basically fulfilling her bodyguard playstyle, trying to find someone to protect. But still, there are some characters that can get a ton of value out of Brig. Basically, just the consistent sustain, being able to protect certain characters that I think can really benefit from being protected. Characters like Ana, I think Ana can be kind of weak in this meta right now, but with a Brig pairing, especially if y'all are duoed, the Ana can be unstoppable and can really start to take over a lobby by being very proactive with her abilities, or use them reactively like a nade plus Brig just being there means that you just can't really die to a dive, especially a tank dive. So it can be super strong overall. And I also do think that Brig is really good at just peeling, keeping characters alive that can get a lot of pressure just standing in the neutral. Characters like Cassidy, surprisingly, I think especially this season, Ball might be a bit unstoppable without crowd control, and being able to deny certain slams with your whip, or being able to protect a character like Cassidy that can constantly shut down that ball, can be really great. And last up, I can't underemphasize the intrinsic value that Brig just brings to the table. There's a reason that Brig has such a high win rate in most ranks, most low elos, and I say low elo, but I mean like most elos in the game, mainly because Brig just brings so much value to the table that it's hard to overcome that with like low skill, right? People need to go above and beyond to even make it through the basic kit of Brig, which is definitely something that you should abuse as a Brig player to get as much value as you possibly can. And it's something that I definitely would suggest if you really want to dominate. Brig might be a perfect character to main or even just have in your back pocket as a support that you whip out when your main is taken or not as easy to get work in a certain game. Brig can be that X factor that can pull you that win out of nowhere. The next character is sadly one of the characters on this list, but I have to put them here. It's Arisa. I mean, Arisa is just taking over this meta, being really strong in this meta. It doesn't seem like any of the changes are going to do anything about that. Arisa is just the tank that gets to have the last laugh. Can't really be focused very easily in a world where every other tank can now. Arisa cannot. Basically unkillable in a lot of circumstances, especially if the Arisa is really good and disciplined with their cooldown cycling. They're not playing in the open when they don't have cooldowns, and they're making sure to give space when they're low cooldowns and take space when they have cooldowns. And Arisa is a character that is really good at brawling sometimes, poking in other situations, and has just really great matchups against most of the tanks in the game. Really good at shutting them down, really good at punishing any character that gets into her effective range, and just really good at being the tank. Like, there's a lot of tanks that don't really fill up to the tanking fantasy where it's like, oh, I can't frontline, I die. Or, oh, I can't take space, I die. I have to play really passive, and I have to be really, really patient, and I have to play really, really slow, or I get bullied, right? A lot of tanks get bullied, and they don't get to play the game. Arisa is the bully. Arisa is the one that gets to be a tank. And I know that that might not be the funnest thing to play or the funnest thing to play against, but at least as a tank player, if you lock Arisa, you know that you are going to get to go where you want to go. You're going to get to withstand things, take damage, trade resources. You're going to get to be a tank. And I think that that is so important, especially in a lot of games where you feel like you just crumble and fall over on anything you play, but you can't get into the fight. You can't create any space. You feel like there's nowhere you can go to make something happen. Maybe there's a lack of synergy with you and your team, or maybe it's some other factor, but regardless, Arisa is a character that I think every single tank player should have in their back pocket to play. And if you need to main Arisa to just basically actually have fun playing tank and be able to actually be a tank, I wouldn't fault you. And I think that if anyone else does, just, solo ult them. I don't know. But the last and certainly not least is a character that I keep preaching about, and I won't stop preaching about her, and it's Ekko. Ekko really fights the meta in such an interesting way because being the best fly character, I think, right now, and as someone that has really played a lot of Pharah and really likes Pharah, I think that it's hard to choose Pharah over Ekko for a couple of reasons. Number one, Ekko is a bit more versatile in the way that you take fights. Ekko's really good at flying high and fighting. Ekko's also really good at playing low ground and fighting from a neutral, which Pharah can be decent at as well. But Ekko's also easier at guaranteeing that damage, fighting other characters that come pretty low and within your effective range. You can burst through those high health totals. And I think the most important thing, and really the X factor between her and Pharah, and really between Ekko and a lot of other DPS, is that Ekko has an amazing ultimate. Ekko's ultimate is so strong, and it can really just shape an entire fight around it. There's a lot of characters that you can copy, but I really think it's important to find characters that you get automatic value from, not necessarily playing characters that you play around their ultimate. If you do want to copy a character where you play around their ultimate, they need to have a way to keep themselves alive long enough for you to get that ultimate, or you play a character or copy a character that has instant value with their ability. So like, as an example, Ana is actually a pretty good copy target, and the reason is because both Sleep and Nade are really goddamn powerful, right? And characters like Jungle Queen can be super, super strong because Shout can keep you alive, get you into the fight, and you can build up that ultimate, which is also really, really strong. But there are other characters that maybe they don't have the guarantee to live, and they don't have the capability to guarantee to get an ultimate. And I think you need to kind of find that balance. And of course, a lot of trial and error is going to be the best way to get better and better at Ekko ultimate. But the other part of this is that because Ekko's so strong in that neutral game, just poking, applying pressure, and being able to just get kills with her beam, then it makes that ultimate even more impactful because you're playing neutral, and then you build that ultimate, and then you can force something to happen. So overall, I think that she fights the meta in a very interesting way, and I think she's a character that, while very hard to play and learn, definitely worthwhile, so definitely grind that out. So yeah, anyways, these are the best characters that I would suggest maining as of Season 10. Definitely let me know if you think I missed any in the comments down below, and please subscribe. I'm trying to get to 100,000 subscribers before 2025. and it's really not that far away, guys, so I would really appreciate your help. Thank you so much for coming by. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.